Yes, this is beef and broccoli, but a souped up version that is so tender and so much more tasty than usual. This is my ultimate beef and broccoli. Beef stir fries often get a really bad rap, and deservedly so, I think. The beef can often be really dry and tough, and what a way to kind of waste a really beautiful cut of steak, I think. Beef's expensive, so let's treat it properly. So I'm going to show you exactly how we can get that beef beautifully tender and soft and glistening in this special version of beef and broccoli. Okay, let's start off with the beef. Now I am using a tender cut. I've got a strip loin here. Rump is good, porterhouse is good, ribeye is good. You could do a flank steak as well, which is a secondary cut, but really great if you slice it really thin. Because this is a tender cut though, I'm going to go a little bit chunky for this one. Kind of like a chunky beef in my beef and broccoli. I do like to slice slightly on the diagonal though. I find that gives us a more tender piece. Now the marinade is uber important here. One, it's going to add the flavour. Two, it's going to do the tenderizing for us. You'll see. So I want some soy sauce first of all. And some Chinese Shaoxing wine. Now if you want to leave your dish alcohol free, just leave this out. You could add in like some pineapple juice or apple juice just to give you a little bit more of a floral fragrance. And then here come the little secret ingredients. Some corn flour. Corn flour is going to kind of mix with the liquids in here and create a kind of silky, glossy texture, just coating the outside of the beef. And then for the tenderizing and browning part, we're using some baking soda. So the baking soda is an alkaline ingredient. That is going to help with the browning process. Also helps to tenderize the meat as well. Just don't leave this to marinate for too long. Baking soda is pretty powerful stuff, and it will affect the flavor of the beef if you leave it, say, for 4 or 5 hours or overnight. Only needs a couple of minutes. Now for the stir fry sauce. So I want a base of oyster sauce. Some soy sauce. Now you also want some dark soy sauce here to give you a beautiful colour. And then here's a little special ingredient, salted black beans. So Chinese salted black beans, they generally come in jars like this. If you open them up, you can see this is what they look like. They're dried, quite firm. And what you want to do is rinse them under running water, and then I like to finely chop them just so they're kind of seep through into the sauce a little better. And that's what they look like there. So this is going to add like a really lovely saltiness and savouriness to the sauce. If you can't get a hold of them, just leave them out, it's fine. It does add a little extra dimension though if you can get a hold of them. And now I want to temper all of that saltiness with a little bit of sweetness. So I've got some sugar and now some vinegar. And just these little extra tweaks, like the little bit of vinegar, the little bit of sugar, that's going to give you a really beautiful balance of flavours. Now a little bit more Shaoxing wine and a little dash of black pepper. Just give that a mix. Okay, a couple more aromatics that we need here. I want some ginger. Peel that. And I want some fairly fine slices here. And now cut those into little strips. Now I'm also going to add some dried chilies. I love the colour and the little pop of kind of dried heat that they bring. And our final aromatic is garlic. So now we're ready to stir fry. Just want some oil in here. My garlic. Ginger and the chilies. And already that smell of the garlic and the ginger and that little bit of a tickle from the chili, it's already got me very excited. Now in goes my beef. And the trick here is to get that beef spread out in the pan really quickly. I want as much heat coming into contact with as many pieces of beef as possible. And I also want to leave that beef just to sear on the first side before I start stir frying and mucking around with it too much. I think one of the things with cooking in a wok at home is the heat is just not as ferocious as it would be in a restaurant. So rather than stir frying the whole time, you kind of got to give the heat a chance to really start browning and searing the meat. All right, toss that through now. And again, spread that beef out, let the heat work its magic. And by timing the addition of your ingredients, you can save on that kind of, stir frying the meat, taking it out, putting it back in. So before my beef is all the way cooked through, I'm going to add in the broccolini. And I'm using broccolini just, for an aesthetic kind of thing rather than broccoli today, but regular broccoli is fine. Okay, toss that through. Get some baby bok choy here as well. And now I'm going to add my stir-fry sauce. Now this is where the magic really happens. So the sauce is going to turn all glossy and thick. It's going to coat that beef. And now when you take a look at that, that beautiful colour, that beef. Some plain rice is good with this. Sure does smell good. Let's have a look. Wow. I mean, that just takes stir frying to a whole new level. And it's so great to eat a beef stir fry where the beef is beautifully tender. The texture is so phenomenal. And just that little addition of, the black beans and then that little bit of sugar, a little bit of vinegar, all of those little things just make this one very special dish. I better eat some greens as well. Even the broccoli tastes great. Super tender bites of beef coated with pepper and a beautiful sauce. This is my version of Cambodian pepper beef. Wow, this has got to be one of my favorite ways to eat an awesome cut of steak, right up there with like steak frites, with Thai crying tiger beef. This one you might not have heard of. It's not as commonly known as those others, but it really packs a punch of flavor. All right, let's get into the flavor part. And I'm gonna be using some Cambodian Kampot pepper. So Kampot is a region in Cambodia that is prized for this production of the pepper. So it's got to be from that region to be Kampot pepper. Looks like regular black peppercorns, but it has a really beautiful floral fragrance and aroma, and it's kind of got a milder bite than a very harsh pepper bite. Look, if you can't get Kampot pepper, just go ahead and use regular black pepper. Do try and find it online if you can. It's really good. I want to freshly grind it. Okay, so that's the kind of texture you're after. I quite like this a little bit rough because that beautiful pepper kind of explodes in your mouth as you bite into it with the steak. Now for the steak itself, I'm using a strip loin, also known as a sirloin, depending on where you are. The important thing here is that it's a tender cut of beef, so you could use ribeye, eye fillet, anything like that. The important part here, I think, is the thickness. So I want this to be at least like 3 centimeters, almost 1.5 inches. That way I get some really nice bite-sized cubes. And to that, I'm going to add some really generous sprinklings here of that Kampot pepper. Now the rest of the marinade ingredients, including a couple of little extras that I've thrown in to keep your beef really soup and tender in the wok. You won't believe how tender this beef is. All right, first up, oyster sauce, soy sauce, some dark sweet soy sauce. So this is going to add a beautiful color to our dish. And now the special ingredients. One is corn flour. So this is going to not only help to thicken up the sauce so it beautifully coats each piece of beef, but it also provides a little bit of texture on the outside of the beef, making it really silky smooth in your mouth. And some baking soda. The baking soda is going to help with browning and keeping the beef really super tender. So they're my two little tricky ingredients that will make all the difference. And then finally, some garlic. Give everything a mix. The beef does not need long to marinate. All those ingredients there are super punchy, so they're going to do their job in record time. The one thing we do need to do before we stir fry is make a little dipping sauce. So you want some of your canned hot pepper, and then about an equal amount of salt, and then some lime juice. Give that a mix, and that is going to be a beautiful peppy dipping sauce for the end. Now the other secret to keeping your beef really super tender here is you want some punchy heat, really high heat. I want to see this wok smoking before I put any oil in there. If you're using a large non-stick frying pan or a cast iron skillet, that's good too. Just get it hot. A little bit of oil. I'm going to swirl that around in my pan. And now the beef goes in. Spread that beef out straight away when it hits the pan, and then just let it sit half a minute or so just to develop some really good color on that first side. Okay, now give it a bit of a stir fry. Check out that color already. See, that is that baking soda doing its job there. What I like to do is just kind of give it a little bit of a stir fry, then let it sit again, get some more color, and just do that a couple of times. And I only want to give this a couple of minutes. I still want it to be really tender through the middle. That'll give you about a medium. If you want it well done, obviously cook it for a bit longer. So at this point the beef is almost there. I'm going to add in my red onion. Now I want some more oyster sauce here to kind of give us some saucy glossiness, and some soy sauce and some sugar. Now this should be a fairly dry stir fry here, guys. All I want is that sauce sticking to the beef rather than forming its own little pool of sauce at the bottom. Would you look at that? So beautifully glossy. Now what I like to do is turn the heat off now and just let that beef rest a little bit in the pan there while I just finish off the rest of our plate. Now whenever I've eaten this in Cambodia, it's come with some beautiful little fresh lettuce leaves and some slices of tomato. I don't see any reason for deviating from that. So off we go with some lettuce, slices of tomato. And then that beautiful beef. There you go, guys. If it's not a classic yet at your household, it sure will be once you try it. Wow. The pepper, that sauce, so tender. Amazing. This is such a great way to eat beef. Spicy, sizzling beef patties spiked with cumin seeds and Szechuan peppercorns, and you won't even believe the amount of flavor in that sauce. And then the little bread parcel. This whole thing is just unbelievably good. This is my very non-traditional version of a meat-filled bread parcel, or a meat sandwich if you like, from Xi'an province in China. Now, the main flavors here that I'm taking inspiration from, the spices. So cumin and Szechuan peppercorns. Let's get going on those first. I want to toast these to really bring out the best flavor. And you want quite a lot of cumin seeds, more than you would think. And some Szechuan peppercorns. Now just heat these until you can see little tendrils of smoke coming up off those spices, and you'll be able to smell how beautiful they are. Okay, these are looking good. I'm gonna get them into my mortar and then grind this to a sort of medium powder. I don't mind having little chunks of cumin seeds in there. I just want to make sure the Szechuan peppercorns are very finely ground. And to that, I want to add a very healthy teaspoon here of chili powder. I really want a good kick of chili spice in these as well. So that's our spice mix done. Let's get on to the burger patty part. Now I'm using some beef, and I'm going to cut that with a little bit of pork mince for some extra fattiness. And then you want to put in all but about 2 teaspoons of this spice mixture. Now I don't want to work this meat too much or too heavily. I want it to stay nice and loose and crumbly when it's in its little bread parcel. So first of all, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the spices and those 2 meats mixed together. And I'm just doing that loosely with a fork. And notice I'm not seasoning this with any salt either, because the salt inside a burger patty can tend to make it a little tough. I prefer to season on the outside. And now I want to form this into patties just by kind of pushing and pressing gently and not mixing or working that meat too much. Okay, so you can see just how loose that patty is. It's almost threatening to fall apart. That's just what we want. So next we're going to make a garlic yogurt sauce. Now I've got some thick Greek yogurt here. To that I'm going to add some grated garlic. And then a healthy dose of finely sliced coriander and the rest of that beautiful spice mix we made earlier. Now look at that. Tangy, garlicky, those spices, that is amazing, yum. All right, we're nearly there. Let's take a look at the bread that we're using. So in this particular area of China, they make really beautiful wheat flour buns for this kind of dish. Now I found these little pita bread pockets at my supermarket, and these are going to do just fine at a pinch, so I don't have to make my own. But what we won't take a shortcut with is heating these guys up. I want to get them into a pan and get them nice and soft and pliable and just a little bit charry on the outside. Now while we're waiting for those buns, I'm going to salt our little patties here. So a generous sprinkling. A lot of the salt sort of comes off the outside of it. It looks like a lot, but it's not. It's going to create a beautiful crust on the outside. Now when I've got a beautiful charry color on both sides, I'm just going to take them out and split them through the middle. Don't cut them all the way through. I like to leave a little bit just at the end there to hold everything together. Now just pop a clean tea towel over those, keep them nice and toasty while we cook our beef. Got a hot grill plate here. I'm going to add some oil. Just brush that so I've got an even coating. And on go my burger patties. Now you want to season this second side with some salt as well. Now these are quite thin, so they don't take too long. All I want is some beautiful blistering color on the outside and a few minutes to cook them through on the inside. So these are looking good and they're smelling amazing as well. Oh, that Szechuan peppercorn and cumin aroma is just out of this world good. Now just on that same grill plate or in the same pan, add a little bit more oil, and then time to get in some onions. Add a little salt to help them caramelize and soften up. And I want some capsicum as well. So now that these vegetables are looking beautifully sweet and soft, I'm going to add some spring onion. Just toss that through. Now it's time to build our sandwich. Take one of my buns. I want a very generous helping of that beautiful spicy yogurt. One of my burger patties. And some of those onions and capsicum. So there you go. If you're looking for a burger alternative, something that is full of spicy goodness, well, this is the dish for you. Let's have a look. So good. That beef has the most amazing texture. It's really soft. And that cumin flavor right through that sandwich. And then the sour yogurt. Anytime I'm doing burgers, I'm definitely doing these. Yum, so perfect. This looks like a humble beef noodle dish, but can I say the flavor here, so amazing, and that beef is super tender. This is my version of Cantonese beef chow fan. So we're going to make beef noodles where the beef doesn't suck. I find in restaurants that a lot of the beef noodles, the beef is really tough and really dry, and it's just not really very pleasant. So we're going to make a very pleasant version of that with some little tips and tricks that I've got just for you. So let's start on the beef first. I'm using strip loin today, also known as sirloin depending on where you are in the world, but any kind of tender cut of beef is good for this one. So the secret here is in the slicing first of all. You want to slice on the diagonal, and this is doing two things. One, it's making your beautiful piece of beef go a little bit further because we've got some really thin slices, and two, it's going to mean that the beef cooks really quickly in the pan. The quicker the beef cooks and sears, the more tender it's going to be. So now we need a marinade to work its magic on that beef. Got some soy sauce here and some Chinese Shaoxing wine. So this is going to add a beautiful fragrance, a little bit of flavor. If you want to keep this alcohol free, just add a little bit of beef stock instead. And now for the secret ingredients that are going to make all the difference here. First of all, baking soda. Now the baking soda will help the beef to brown quicker in the pan. And again, the quicker that happens, the more tender we can keep our beef. And some corn flour. The corn flour makes the beef, or the outside of the beef, really silky smooth and kind of creates a soft, tender texture in your mouth. Is exactly what we want here. Best thing to do here is get in there with your hands. I want to make sure that each piece of beef gets some love here. So the stir fry sauce, really simple. I want some beef stock, some oyster sauce, some soy sauce, and a little touch of vinegar. I think this is one of the other secret ingredients that kind of makes the whole dish really super special. You'll be surprised, you get that kind of kick of beautiful tanginess. A little dash of sugar, and then a little bit more corn flour here, this time mixed with some water. Now the noodles that we're using for this one, we're using fresh rice noodles. This is what you'll find at an Asian grocery store, and they're usually in the fridge section. So what happens is these noodles actually firm up quite a bit, and a lot of you guys have written in to tell me that when you cook with these noodles they always break apart into little bits and you don't know what's going on. So if I tried to just break these up now, they would all fall to bits. What you need to do is pop them in the microwave about 20 seconds so that they loosen up. I'll show you. So now that my noodles are a little bit warm, I can pick them up and they'll just come apart beautifully. Now you want to go through your entire pile here. Just take a little bit of extra time, and this will mean that when you go to stir fry your noodles, they'll turn out much better. Now if you can't get a hold of these fresh rice noodles, I do have a video on how to make these from scratch, or you can just get a hold of the widest sized dried rice noodles you can from your supermarket and cook those before you stir fry. Now you can do this in a wok or a very large frying pan. The key thing here is get it uber hot. You really want a high heat here. Then add in your oil and some onion. Now add in that beef. Make sure you spread that out in the pan. I want as much of that beef surface area coming into contact with that hot pan as possible. Just give that beef a little chance to get some color on the first side, then get in there and stir fry. And now do that again. Leave the beef for a little bit before you go and stir fry. I find this is the best way to handle a wok or wok cooking, stir fry cooking when you're at home and you don't have a super high heat like when you're in a restaurant. Just need to give that meat some time. Now the beef has got a little bit of color, it's almost cooked. I'm gonna add in my bean shoots, give those a quick toss. Now the noodles and our stir fry sauce. And this is where we bring everything together. So just keep tossing the noodles and the sauce until we get a situation where the noodles are softened and silky and that sauce is thickened up a little bit. So this is looking just perfect. I'm gonna add in some spring onion now. And now fresh rice noodles will not wait for anyone. They're best served straight away. Pop them out onto a plate. And there you go, guys. Just like I promised, beef noodles where the beef doesn't suck. I wonder if we could put that as a recipe title. Maybe, we'll see. Now I've got my special chopsticks here. Just secretly, I'm a little bit Hello Kitty obsessed. That is so good. The silky noodle and the silky beef, so beautiful. The Southeast Asian in me really wants to add some chili here, but you know what? There's a real elegance and understated beauty about these noodles just as they are. Yum. I think the Hello Kitty chopsticks make them taste better too. Melt in your mouth, super tender beef, slowly braised in a beautiful sauce spiked with Vietnamese flavors. This is my version of Vietnamese beef stew. Vietnam has so many interesting dishes, and I love this one because it's one of the ones that takes a little bit from French cuisine, and that's owing to Vietnam's history, of course. And this is a really beautiful beef stew, but flavored with amazing Vietnamese spices and aromatics. I love it. Anyway, let's get started on the all-important marinade, because that is going to add a lot of the flavor that we're looking for. So I just need some lemongrass, obviously not your usual suspect for a beef stew. Now to break this up, I just want to hit this with the back of my knife. And I always like to peel off these outer layers. They can be really quite firm, a bit hard and tough. Slice off the end. So now we're in the really soft part of the lemongrass, and I'm just going to finely slice that. To that I'm going to add some fish sauce, some brown sugar, and some Chinese 5-spice. So this is my homemade Chinese 5-spice. If you want to give it a try, you can watch the video on how to make it on my YouTube channel. I just love the fragrance of this. And when it's fresh like this, it really makes a big difference. Just give that a mix through. Now let's talk about the beef. I am using beef chuck, and the reason is that I love this fatty marbling that goes right through that beef. You're really looking for a secondary cut of beef here because I want it to break down, and all the fat and the little bits of sinew will get all gelatinous and soft and amazing. So that's the kind of beef that you want. You could use beef shin as well. That would be a good one. And I'm just going to get that straight into my marinade. And I just give this a mix through, and you will be surprised at how much fish sauce really emphasizes the flavor of the beef. When you go to fry this a little bit later on, the beef just smells beefier, and the finished dish tastes beefier, I think, and it's all because that fish sauce just adds a bit of kick, savory kick or umami kick to the dish. Now you just want to give that marinade time to do its work in there. About 30 minutes is good. So the beef has had its time to get extra beefy in that marinade, so now we're going to start our stew. And just like any Western or French stew, we're going to start off by browning the meat. So I want some oil into a hot pan. And now, contrary to what you'll hear in a lot of different places, searing the meat is nothing to do with sealing in juices or any weird things like that. This is purely about flavor. So the reaction that happens on the outside of the beef, all the browning and all that beautiful color, that is the flavor that we want in our beef stew. So it's purely a flavor play here. Now don't overcrowd your pan here. If you need to do this in batches, that's fine. The important thing is that we're all about the color and the heat and the browning here. So once I've got that beautiful deep color on all sides of that beef, I'm just going to take it out into a tray. Okay, now any leftover marinade in your bowl, just pour that on top of the beef as well, and we'll get all of that back into the pan along with those resting juices a bit later. But first we want to fry off a few more aromatics. So I'm going to add a little bit more oil to the pan here. Don't wash the pan, just leave those lovely beefy juices in the bottom. Add in some garlic and some shallots. Now give those shallots time to soften up in the pan here. Use your spoon to scrape up any little bits of flavor from the bottom as well. Now I'm going to add in some tomato paste. Just give that tomato paste a little time to cook out in the pan. Now I'm also going to need some ginger here. I just want some slices that are going to infuse the sauce, and some star anise and some cinnamon. Now add that beef back in and any of those juices. Just mix that beef around, get it coated in that tomato paste. Now we want to add in some carrots. And then some water. So I just want enough water that it sort of comes about halfway up that beef and carrot mixture. A lot of juice will come out of the beef as well, so I won't add too much. Now just wait for this to come back up to a gentle simmer, and then you can put a lid on. And you can do this two ways. So on the stovetop is fine, a really low, gentle heat for a couple of hours or until that beef is really meltingly tender. I tend to find though that cooking this in the oven is a lot easier because sometimes you can overheat the beef as it's cooking on the stovetop because of that really hot heat underneath. I find the beef isn't as tender, so I'm going to get mine into the oven. Now, this beef has been making my kitchen smell amazing. Let's take a look. All those beautiful spices, the star anise, the cinnamon, divine. Now, let's just check and see if that beef is ready. What I want is for that piece just to fall apart at the touch of my spoon. And there you go. Beautifully tender. So good. Now we'll just test the sauce for a little bit of seasoning. Let's just see. That is such a beautiful combination. You can't even really put your finger on all the different aromatics because they all just blend in so harmoniously, but the lemongrass is there and that beautiful star anise. So delish. I will add a little bit more fish sauce though for my liking. Just gently stir that through. Now we just serve that up in a nice big bowl. A little bit of coriander on top. Now this goes perfectly with steamed rice, or my preference is a beautiful, nice, crusty French baguette. Just dunk that into that sauce. A little piece of beef. That is so heaven. Oh, so good. This is honestly beef stew, whole nother level.